Welcome to another Knowledge Odyssey book review. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more content. Thank you. Today's book that I will be reviewing is called Lift by Faisal Hoque, Jeff Wuorio, and Shelley Moench-Kelly. Faisal Hoque is an accomplished entrepreneur, senior executive, author, thought leader, public speaker, and advisor to management teams and BODs with more than 25 experience of cross-industry success. He is the founder of Shelley, Next Chapter, and other companies. Jeff Wuorio has written more than 30 books covering entrepreneurship, leadership, progressive workplaces, and other similar subjects. His work has also appeared in Time, Business Week, Money Magazine, Fortune, US Today, and many other publications and websites. Shelley Moench-Kelly is a New York-based writer with more than 3,500 published articles and blogs for freelance clients for many large companies. She is a longtime member of the Association of Ghostwriters, the Freelancer Union, and the Authors Guild. Her latest book is Here's Your Pill, Kitten. This book has 3 sections, which are Where Are We Now, Amid the Change, All of This Opportunity, and Be Transformational. In the first section, they explain the world's current state and how it is changing. Section 2 describes the opportunities provided with technology in different areas like financial and ethical, education, healthcare, and the public sector. The final section gives us transformational leadership advice to help us through the current transformation of technology in the world. So let's begin with part 1. In part 1, they explain the 4th Industrial Revolution, which they define as emerging technologies and their interactions with one another that is appending how we work, play, educate, and govern ourselves. They further explain each industrial revolution, the first being mechanized production, the second being electrical power employment, and the third being informational technology that enables automation. The 4th Industrial Revolution is driven by the rise of artificial intelligence, robotics, the Internet of Things, automation, and many more. They also mention that it is coming to us exponentially and creates change and disruption. They define each of the exploding technologies that are currently ongoing right now. I'll explain one of these terms I have not heard until reading this book. The example is cobots, which are mature iterations of robots designed to collaborate with humans, hence the name cobots. They also talk about how the 4th Industrial Revolution is moving quickly with technology integration, and COVID-19 has elevated the rate at which it is becoming associated with our lives. Moving on, they mention that the strength of work culture does not depend so much on the logistics, but a clear definition of an organization's values that benefits working remotely. Due to COVID-19, the increase in remote working has been more widespread, which is being embraced as it shows a work-life balance improvement. However, they said that it could be a double-edged sword because it could lead to loneliness or isolation and a blurred work-life separation, meaning it'd be hard to separate the two from one another. On the other hand, they also mention that greater access to freelancing tools creates flexibility and opportunities. Next, they discuss how the 4th Industrial Revolution has impacted the medical sector. Since the beginning, it has started improving its proactive health abilities. Technology has enabled us to check our own health status before going to the doctor to access the same information. This allows us to change our lives to improve our health conditions. They also mentioned that the shifts in education have occurred due to technology integration. They say that education will be more focused on experiential and employable skills. Due to COVID-19, the push for remote learning has become a practical option for students to choose. And they mentioned that leaders will have to think and act differently in adjusting to the changes. Next, they also discussed the improvements in our purchasing habits, stating that consumers are more focused on home-use products. Furthermore, QR codes and contactless purchasing, like Apple Pay, for example, have become more popular. They shift their focus to the first significant impact, which is COVID-19. As they've stated, COVID-19 has accelerated the 4th Industrial Revolution since lockdown procedures made us turn to technology to continue living our lives. They mention that pre-COVID-19 people with higher paying jobs were capable of already having access to on-site or remote working capabilities. Post-COVID-19, we have learned to allow low-income workers to have the same ability to do many jobs remote working. Furthermore, education has become affected by moving towards a more online way of learning, and they suspect that this will be a continued trend. They provide a few tips for living as leaders, which are accepting your battles, leveraging your solitude, guiding your energy, achieving small goals every day, and influencing others, then letting them influence you. Empathy always pays dividends, and no matter what, move forward. When they mention accepting our battles, we must come to terms with them and embrace them, going at it head on without thinking about them twice. Leveraging your solitude means finding some time to be by yourself and think about what you must do. They mention that some of our greatest thoughts occur when we are alone. Sometimes we must slow down to progress, and solitude allows us to do that. Next, guiding your energy is straightforward. We must ensure that we guide our energy towards positivity and limit the negativity as much as possible. They mention that to survive, we must ride our ups and downs, and life is a journey, and it's not always smooth. Next, achieving small daily goals will boost our productivity and enable us to reach our goals. This is where we retain our motivation for the task or goal we set out to complete. Influencing others and letting them influence us means we as leaders must inspire and influence others through good and the bad times. They state that we must manage incredible levels of uncertainty with calm, relaxed, and positive attitudes, which is often hard to do. They suggest maintaining an open, positive attitude, but we must address the situation by asking ourselves the right questions, creating an immediate plan, and putting the plan into action using clear communication. They mention that empathy pays dividends because there is no way to reach a common goal unless everyone in the organization understands what it is and what is expected of them. We must be transparent with all of our expectations and their responsibilities in the organization. This goes both ways. We must actively listen to our employees to ensure that they get everything they require to complete their tasks. Lastly, they state that we must continue to move forward no matter what, because we are all resilient. Next, they talk about the second ongoing impact, which is climate change. They start by giving a summary of the current situation of climate change. Then they mention that the world has become so interconnected with one another that a country's environmental problem may become the rest of the world's problem, which impacts their economic conditions. They mention that because of COVID-19. Resources in many countries have been stretched to focus on that problem, and less money is there for climate change, which leads to not having a meaningful plan to tackle that problem. They state that this will only increase the climate change rate. They also touch on how climate change has impacted education to focus on green skills to complement technology. With this combination, it could lead to further advancement in climate change predictability and prevention methods. They conclude part 1 with the final ongoing impact, which is misinformation. They said technology has enabled an increase in misinformation, which could lead to devastating consequences as they become more persuasive in the public eye. Some examples would be involving political leaders and outlets, and the COVID-19 misinformation. They mentioned that misinformation can lead the public to inaccurate data and refuting experts as they attempt to provide reliable sources and evidence. Ultimately, experts and the media perceive a lack of credibility due to misinformation. They state that younger people who are more vulnerable to fake news due to the lack of their experience, and they are more prone to believe what they see without taking any steps to identify its legitimacy. However, they mention that there is a rising effort to combat fake news to prevent students from falling victim to it. They give us some tips to avoid leaving a bad impression on the internet, which are posting with empathy, being inclusive, always going for high moral ground, and displaying courage. In short, you want to put yourself in someone else's shoes and beware what you're saying that may be offensive to someone. Include people who might be marginalized as well. Always remain professional and avoid insults that lead to amplifying the conversation. Lastly, display courage and stand behind what you believe in. In part 2, amid the change, all this opportunity, they list emerging technology capabilities on individuals' opportunity, business, education, healthcare, and the public sector. They start by telling us that we have more opportunities than ever to direct the path of our lives. We can become today's leaders by empowering others, adapting to different environments, and changing for the better. They state that consumers are more in control because we hold the capacity to alter, influence, and transform using a collective community involvement. Technology leveraging allows us to adopt new ideas for our organization's principles. They use remote working as a key example to explain additional skills gained when it is used. They explain that not everyone produces their best work in a 9-to-5 environment. Referring to what they stated previously in earlier chapters, our best ideas are sometimes produced when we are alone. This could be the case for some people. They also mention that remote working allows employees to optimize their time to work on their tasks. In return, it helps develop their self-management skills. They ask us to remember the 3 fundamental questions when we were worried about lacking the knowledge or capabilities to complete a task, or just hesitant to start learning something new. The questions are, am I stuck in a rut? What am I really afraid of? And do I have the right heroes? They mention that we should change things up a bit if we're stuck in a rut. They suggest we should experiment with things like waking up early, making new friends, or setting new goals. If we are afraid of something, we should start small and make a clear step toward achieving that goal by making it a priority. Next, do we have the right people to guide us in the right direction? If not, we need to find those people who can mentor us to make us better. They suggest that when we find our heroes or role models, we need to study their work, learn what makes them successful, and figure out who their mentors are, and then apply those lessons to our lives. In the business world, they mention that we always go with the statement, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. While there is some truth to it, there is a possibility that the process is outdated and is not producing the best output possible. This is when it is required to make a change in the process, which may lead to some bumps in the road, but it is necessary for the organization's future. They focus on the aspects of remote learning and how this could benefit greater productivity and employment satisfaction. What also could come out of remote working is well-qualified employees willing to do the task outside of an office area. They also mentioned that it would prevent organizations from closing businesses due to natural disasters or emergencies. Lastly, the improvement in environmental footprints will be reduced since employees won't have to travel back and forth to work. They close this chapter by giving us tips to become effective futurists. They stated that for this to come to life, we must ask the right questions. Starting with what's our process for assessing the future. We must examine the current strategy in place and ensure that it will make us remain relevant and ahead of competition in the future. Next, we must analyze the impact of the current work being produced. Do things need to be improved in our organization? Lastly, we must evaluate the present capabilities and make necessary improvements. The second question is, how are we reading the news? Are we analyzing the correct information? In what direction will the future be that the news feed we are receiving is projecting? They mentioned that currently what we see in individual technologies will have different fates. Anything that can be digitalized will be. Anything that can go wireless will be. And things that can be smaller will be. Lastly, any information that can be moved freely will be moved. The third question is, are we consistently testing what we think is working fine? As stated before, we may have processes that are working currently, but how outdated is that process? Is there a better way to do it to increase efficiency? We must ask ourselves these questions to ensure we know what is happening within our organizations. The next question is, how are we managing information? In short, they mention that we must look at organizations as an information collector, processor, and distributor all at once. Furthermore, We must ensure that they can do such tasks correctly and efficiently for the organization. They end by saying that we cannot predict the future, but we can ensure that the future leaders are prepared to live it. Next, they focus on education. They start by saying that our education system is empowered by consumers and has opportunities to flourish by adapting and changing from the systemic practices many believe to be outdated and broken. They mention that the fourth industrial revolution will enable education to promote learning values and beliefs with technology that can be used effectively and morally. Education must advocate for technology to be used well instead of putting fear in students' minds about the potential job takeover. They say that education should no longer exclusively focus on career readiness, but on how they can develop a vision for the world they want to create. They then explain how technology created today has and will make a better learning environment for students. They give us more tips on focusing on soft skills, stating that they do matter now. They first say we must capitalize on our strengths more than our weaknesses. Secondly, they tell us that we should break out of our shells occasionally. They suggest taking courses or volunteering. Thirdly, don't be afraid to step out of the norm. Just because everyone is going for a business or STEM degree does not mean we all have to follow that same path. Fourthly, we should modify, reuse, and automate to our advantage, meaning don't try to reinvent the wheel every time. Lastly, practice staying focused on one task. Finally, they touch on how medical and public sectors are affected by emerging technologies. The medical field is becoming more digitalized, and health statuses are becoming more proactive with devices enabling us to do it ourselves. Ultimately, it has the potential to save money and increase efficiency. As for the public sector, governments will need to implement training that will complement technology integration in the areas that will require them. In return, this will allow the government to help respond to citizens' needs and priorities much faster. In Part 3, they focus on the leadership qualities and tips needed to foster leadership in us. They start with emotional intelligence, explaining that it is required to inspire others. This is because we are embracing others and giving them a sense of value. Additionally, we are providing them with significant meaning to the organization's goals. They state that as transformational leaders, we must accept that uncertainty will happen. Experiential learning is essential because it helps us understand what works and what doesn't. They provide us with some steps to develop our emotional intelligence. The first is to develop a beginner's mindset, meaning don't act like we know everything. Take action back and be open-minded. Welcome learning from others who may be under us. They will appreciate that we take the time to do this. Next, become self-aware of how we respond or behave, which will require feedback from others to understand what we're doing right and wrong. A few more are to remain motivated, slow down, practice active listening, have self-control, and so on. Ultimately, we want to show humility to people, and they will have respect for you because of it. Lastly, they go back to soft skills to explain their importance today. They mention that before the fourth industrial revolution, employers usually ignore soft skills in business environments. Now, there is a realization that both hard and soft skills are needed because they are both equally critical pieces to success. They say having an optimistic mindset isn't enough. We must learn how to use that optimism consistently and smartly. The reality is that we're all changing. Whether consumers or students, we must adapt and become flexible to the mindsets of those consumers and students. It is going to be risky and challenging to predict the future. However, the integration of technology as well as asking those right questions will increase the chances of making intelligent decisions for the future of our organizations. They state that asking the right questions isn't the only thing we should be considering doing. They share a few things we should consider doing to help us along the way. The first one is focus on the purpose and outcomes, not the activities. Collaborate, don't compete. Always attempt to work together. Don't make solutions and winning inseparable. Focus on group success. Embrace the crazy to a certain degree. as well as embrace diversity. Ideas do not come just from one group of people. Some of the greatest ideas come from several minds from different backgrounds and age groups. Develop flexibility and capacity, meaning always be ready to adapt when needed. When it is time to adapt quickly. And lastly, know what to say and what not to say. They say that transformational leaders are exponential leaders who are diverse in many skill sets and approaches. They name a few like futurist, humanitarian, innovator, technologist. We will not be experts in each skill set, but we must understand and apply these traits. Lastly, they state that compliance is not the goal. Skilled, connected, and practical leadership is. Ultimately, this book is excellent for an audience who wants to know more about how they can integrate and contribute to their organizations with evolving technologies. This book's meat and potatoes consist of ongoing modern-day issues, with sprinkles of leadership tips here and there. Towards the end, they focus on enhancing our leadership abilities in this evolving world. I encourage anyone interested in the modern-day issues who want additional tips to improve their leadership skills to read it. If you aren't interested in that type of stuff and are more focused on looking for a leadership book, this book may be challenging to get through. However, it still has great information that gives insight into the status of general sectors today. Thank you all for watching. This is the longest book review I've made so far, so please like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this. Also, if you have not already, take a look at my other book reviews. They provide good information to help you in your daily life. Remember to educate yourself to educate others. Until next time.